Well, welcome back to our second podcast as we're visiting with Will J. Roberts, who served on the International Mission Board for 38 years in Africa. And he's going to talk a little bit about his days at OBU. And so, Will J., tell us about OBU. How did you decide to go to Oklahoma Baptist University?
Well, my mother had gone there for 1 year. My uncle George Wilson had gone there, so OBU was just the only logical choice for me. And so I went there as a freshman, and my roommate was Dean Burke. That was a tremendous influence. He was a very spiritual person. And then Verlin West from Raiden roomed with me part of the time there, and in fact 2 or 3 of the years there. OBU was just where I wanted to be, and I was part of Ministerial Alliance, and I got to preach some. And I remember Avery Willis was in charge of Noonday, and he asked me to do a Noonday on having a prayer partner. Well, I didn't have a prayer partner. I didn't know what it was. So I asked a friend, Jim Rich, if he would be my prayer partner. And that was one of the most greatest spiritual experiences that I could have ever had. In fact, Jim's still a dear friend. So I was very active, and especially my junior and senior year, I got opportunity to preach some revivals around and do youth revivals. So I was a senior, getting ready to go, and made plans to go to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I had maybe been to life service band a time or two, but not much. And for some reason, January 1957, I'm a senior now, getting ready to graduate in May. And so I went that night, and they were talking about the BSU, a group that had gone to Nashville for a BSU retreat. And guess who was there? Frances Marie Morgan. She had been one of the team that went to, and she had on her nurse's uniform because her history was she grew up very poor. And in fact, a high school principal, his wife, sponsored her to go to nurses training. And it was an in-house nurses training deal where you lived there. So her senior year, or third year there, she had surrendered to go as a missionary. One of the doctors that was doing a farewell message said that ought to give to missions. Well, she was a member of First Baptist Church in Oklahoma City, and she said, I have nothing to give. But that night in church, she said, Lord, I give myself. So she was going to go as a single missionary nurse. Later it went to Africa. She told me it's Bolivia. And so she'd been very active in the BSU there. So at OBU, she came to OBU to get her degree because she couldn't go as a single missionary nurse without a degree. And the program she was on, she was a registered nurse, but she didn't have a degree. So she came to OBU to get her degree. And so then she gave her testimony a little bit that night. And I went up and told her, I said, I'd like to learn more about that trip. And she had on her beautiful nurse's uniform, nurse's cap, because she was on duty. She and another nurse were on duty. And so we got together and talked more about that trip and her plans, her surrendering to be a missionary. And so over time, God led us together. And for the next 4 or 5 months, we dated. She didn't have a lot of time because she was in school full time and was the nurse, one of the 2 campus nurses. And since I was preaching a lot, I got a lot of sore throat. And my story is that I'd go into the clinic there. Interesting enough, I'd never been to the clinic there until I met her, and that she would say, well, go home and gargle with hot salt water. If you're not better tomorrow, come back. Now, I only went back if she was the one that's on duty. If the other nurse was on duty, my throat was all right. So, but God led us together, and we went to Southwestern after we graduated, and she spent that summer working on for a doctor down in Lawton, and was sewing up her wedding dress. And I preached that summer. I think I preached 10 or 11 revivals that summer. And then after we got married in Shawnee on Friday night. And then of the stupidity, I've accepted another revival for the following week in Sapulpa. They'd wanted me real bad to come, and I had my summer fully booked up. So I'd agreed to do it, which meant that I was going to go to Southwestern a week late. So we spent our honeymoon in Northern Heights in Sapulpa, and then went to Southwestern. And Marie then enrolled in Texas Christian, and it was the beginning of a wonderful life. We married September 5, 1957, and as many of you know, she passed away January 16th of this year. We'd been married 67 years and 4 months, and just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful asset to my life. We went to the mission field. I pastored at Gene Baptist Church down below Wichita Falls for 2+ years after seminary and post-seminary, and then went from there to East Africa.
Well, let's start another podcast here in just a moment as we talk about that. And of course, you spent 4 years at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth. And now, did Marie, she took classes there also? And so you were taking your classes? And so did Marie get her master's there?
No.
Okay.
She didn't finish there. She went first for Texas Christian. She was working on her degree because she didn't have a degree.
Right.
But then once she got pregnant, well, another thing, part of the story was the Southwestern was going to send a team out to the Bahamas to summer missionaries, and there were going to be eight people going. Well, Marie and I applied, and guess what? We were accepted to go. So Marie and I, after we'd been married, just our first anniversary, we were in the Bahamas. And I remember I had 2 IMB missionaries that were there, Emmett Ray and John Brady, and Otis Brady. And I remember something that they said was, of course, this is the time that a lot of hostility toward blanks and toward churches and stuff. So, but what the Emmett Ray said you need to love the people. If you don't love them, they're going to know it. And if you don't love them, you can't tell them about Jesus. And so that became my motto, is love the people and tell them about Jesus. I later modified it and learned their language. So love the people, tell them about Jesus, and learn their language. And that's true even whether you're in Africa or where, you need to speak the language that the people speak. It may be English, and that may be something to vary it. You need to vary it a bit, but God is good. And we spent 3 years at Southwestern, and then during the latter part of that time, I was pastoring at Gene Baptist Church in Holland and Graham, and we had one daughter at that point. We had a second daughter was born there, and then in 1962, we were appointed to go as IMB missionaries to East Africa.
Okay, that's a good stopping point for here, and we appreciate you watching today, and we're going to look a little bit into your call and going to the IMB or to the Foreign Mission Board. And so thank you for today, and we'll see you in just a little bit.